All right. Again, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, if some of you may be in other time zones on other areas of the country. My name is Darnell D-Day Jonas. I am on the board of the Charlotte chapter of Blacks in Technology. Again, we're pleased to present Kurleigh Ryan, and I have a little bio about him. Oops, there we go. a little bio here. It's quite seldom that we have our midst, and that we're pleased to have someone that's so highly credentialed as Kurleigh, operationally sound individual, willing to join us and share his insights into tech and the interest that we all have here. Kurleigh joins us from the Raleigh-Durham area. He currently works as an IT auditor. He also works as a cyber architect at the same time. The idea is working more than one job is becoming more and more frequent, and we're hearing more about that. With COVID creating demand for work from home capabilities, some of us have been said to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 full-time jobs. The seven part was a bit of an exaggeration, but you'll get the point. At the same time, surely we have to approach that responsibly, ethically, morally, legally, and all the other LYs that you could add in. Professionalism does not allow for shoddy work. Kurleigh will provide us with a holistic approach to determining if a second role is feasible, provided our circumstances, and if it is found to be feasible, what factors need to be heavily weighed to ensure success. Please join me giving a Blacks in Technology Charlotte chapter welcome to Mr. Kurleigh Ryan. Again, thanks for joining with us.
Hi, good afternoon. Nobody online. So I'd love to have a very interactive talk with you guys today, because my situation might be different from yours, and it's the only way that we could actually have a holistic view of the environment in terms of what you guys do, what I do, and how I could present to you guys in such a way that you all will have a better grasp of what I'm trying to bring to you guys. Right. Let me move my Zoom, bring it down here. That way I don't look as though I'm looking up. Right. So I'm gonna share my screen because I have a beautiful presentation for you guys. Right. 1 minute. Slideshow stuff. Pick it up. Can I share? So Darnell, I can't share. So
Let's see. So you should be able to share now.
Okay, let me try again. Okay. So this is what I want to share. Right. Right. So are you guys seeing my screen? You tell me.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let me give you all a brief introduction of myself. I am Kurleigh Ryan. I've worked in the financial industry for the past, I would say 7 years. Before that, I worked with an ISP back home in my original country, which is Trinidad and Tobago. And I came up from there being a network architect, a network engineer, and moved into cybersecurity within that period of time. I've been in cybersecurity since then. It's really cybersecurity, information, infrastructure, and data privacy, as well as governance, risk, and compliance. and for me, that gives me a holistic view of what cybersecurity is, what security in terms of IT is actually, So I'll present to you guys today, Growing Your Wealth, which is the dollars and cents, by recognizing honestly the worth that you have. I'm sure that each one of you all have a different skill set, and that is why this needs to be an interactive conversation. Yeah.
Curly, there is a note on our end. It's showing the presenter version of the slide where it's not full size.
Okay, let me see if I can change that. Okay, share, let me share. I'm to share screen 2. Screen 2. Are you seeing it now?
Yes, it's on full screen now.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna take you through our agenda. Gonna be topic 1, which is who you are. This is what you have to offer to this industry. And there's 2 quotes from 2 people who I guess kind of really change who I am. And the first one is Steve Harvey's quote: "We all have skills that are skills which are our greatest asset to becoming wealthy." And what he meant by that is that no matter how you look at someone else, you in your own self have a skill that you can capitalize on in terms of being wealthy, and wealthy meaning money, right? But then there's Hill Harper. I don't know how many of you know this brother, but he's a Black entrepreneur, actor, and by profession lawyer. He has a book which, again, it changed a lot of how I see things, and that is Letters to a Young Brother, Manifest Your Destiny. And I would advise everyone, Black, white, girl, boy, man, woman, to read this book. It really touches in terms of the insight of taking you to looking at life through a different perspective. But what he said is that the only real wealth is education and knowledge. So don't squander the opportunity, because that is the real wealth that you chase after, because having that type of wealth brings wealth, Then we'll go on to topic 2, which is what you have, what are the skills that I possess and make me who I am, and what are the markets that you can get involved in, right? And then we go into the very critical part, which is what Daniel highlighted. What are the risks? Who is at risk? Why take the risk, and is the risk worth it? And I think this is kind of like the most important part of this topic, of this talk, because you have things to take into account. The industry that you're working in, you don't want to create issues where you're having issues with your employer versus your side job, So that'll be something that we need to talk. And I really hope that you all are very interactive in that part, because that is the only way I'll be able to answer some of your questions, right? So I gave a brief introduction of who I am. So let's get into it, right? Let's reflect on who we are individually. Individually, each one of us come from a different background, whether it's working in just information technology, whether it's just, working based on we're an analyst, or we're an engineer, or we're at that point in time where we're switching jobs, we're switching from, I don't know what you're doing, but IT is where the money is, and we're trying to get into that industry. You have to look at what you're bringing to the table. A lot of times when I, in the past, have interviewed persons, I would see someone who now starts out as an analyst, but they're applying for an engineering position. And you have no clue as to what an engineer does. You have no clue as to what an architect does. But yet still you're looking more at the financial aspect of it and trying to grasp that. Now, you have to recognize within your own self what it is that you're bringing to the table. So could I get a feel for how many persons, just by a show of hands, how many of you are early career? Nobody? Somebody mid-career? Now, I know that I saw some engineers and administrators on when I looked on that slogan, right? So we have one. Anybody is senior in their career? Okay. So this works. Let me drag this down here so I can see. Right. So based on what it is that you're bringing to the table is how you're gonna envision where you want to go. So it's your starting point in terms of how you're gonna chart your path into not only a second job, but also your career. So you have, this is your baseline and this is where you're going. Now, things to take into account. You have to look at what are the certifications, what are some of the requirements that you're gonna chart on that path that you're gonna develop for yourself. Now, some people wanna get into SecOps, some people wanna get into DevOps, some people wanna get into auditing, which is governance, risk, and compliance. And some people wanna get into management. You have to look at everything that comes by in terms of what exactly do you have and where are you starting, right? That is a key element in terms of progressing forward, not only in career, but looking for a side job. So we're gonna take a look to see the markets, and I'll give a breakdown of the markets that are out there and how you as an individual, how the education and how the certifications ties into where you want to go, right? So first thing that we'll look at the cybersecurity industry size by the year. So back in 2017, there wasn't much going on, right? Yes, you had cybersecurity, but I could tell you from my perspective, a lot of companies weren't investing. The companies that were investing were companies that were accustomed dealing in IT and, who were mainly banks, tech industries, no small business, government. Those were your key players in the cybersecurity industry. Now, cybersecurity has taken on a whole different evolution with the introduction of things like AI, with APTs, with countries being APTs in themselves, but also what I call local threats and insider threats. And insider threats doesn't, for me, only look like within the organization, but also within the country itself. Because on an average, I know that many of you as analysts would look, if it is that you're looking at your SIMs, you would see that a lot of the insider threats are within the US in places like Oregon, Milwaukee, Chicago. These are some of the places that I see for myself, a lot of these insider threats, right? Now, this is the nice part of things, because now this is a breakdown of where you, in terms of looking for a new job or a side job, here's where you look in terms of capitalizing on the industry and the segments of industry. So if you take a look, you'll see infrastructure production is kind of like the lease. If it is that you were to take on an infrastructure job is a 24-hour job. There's no downtime, there's no relaxing time for that. So therefore, you're always on call, you're always on the ball, you always have to be tweaking devices at all times. You have identity access management. Most of that is automated, right? Same as data security. Data security is database security. That is also automated. Most of that is stored in the cloud. Most of that is secure by cloud security. Now you have 3 other segments, which is integrated risk management. That is more specific to persons who are auditors in terms of managing the risk of the organization, and that is tied to the C-suite and senior management. So then that leaves you with really 2 segments to really play in, and that is the security services and network security equipment. Let me break down those 2 things for you. The network security equipment deals with monitoring, strictly monitoring. This is not the infrastructure. We're talking about someone who sits and monitors network traffic and monitors the performance of the devices that handles those networks. Now that segment is more geared towards someone, I would say, with a background like mine, who is able to maneuver within the networking segment, which is outside of the security realm, and be able to tweak things like switch performance, router performance, load balancers, on-premise firewalls, proxy servers. Those are the things that I'm talking about in terms of the network security equipment. Yes, it might look, or you might take it as being just firewalls and stuff like that, but you're talking about the network security. So you're talking about things like VLAN segmentation, right? But then there's security services, and this is the realm that I capitalize on. Why do I capitalize on this? I capitalize on this realm because it is so wide and it's geared towards the industry not having enough cybersecurity personnel. Back in 2017, I would have highlighted to you guys that a number of, if you looked at the diagram, you would see that, as I pointed out, the segments would have been large corporations and governments. In today's cybersecurity landscape, it's no longer those large organizations, but rather it's a small and medium to enterprise, small to medium enterprise that are underdeveloped in terms of their implementation of security. And these are the people that I utilize as clients. The reason why I utilize them as clients is because, one, their security infrastructure is small. A lot of them are now trying to get off the ground. So therefore, I don't have to do actual hands-on work, but it's rather consultancy. From an architect position, that is what consultancy is. It's helping an organization that doesn't have a security policy standard or even baseline to develop these things in order for them to become, I want to say, security efficient and effective. Some of the services that I provide in this area is things like sitting down with the C-suite, sitting down with senior managers, sitting down with business units and developing baselines for each business unit, as well as an overall security policy for the organization. What that looks like is, after developing the security policy, you now have to implement a project. So you'll implement a security project in terms of implementing these security policies within the organization. A lot of times, for me, I choose not to go beyond 6 months with an organization. Reason for that: when you go beyond 6 months with an organization, it tends to put you in a situation where now they rely on you, and their reliance on you is what can create a situation for you in terms of compromise who you are as an individual, working not only a side job, but trying to basically work two jobs at the same time, where this job is almost competing with your quote unquote your regular job. So, number of cybersecurity openings in the United States. As of yesterday, you have 755,743 jobs available within the United States. Right? And this was done back in March 2022 to February 2023. If it is that you search in Texas or California for a job, you'll realize that it's very easy to find openings and fill those jobs. But a lot of those jobs are, again, small to medium enterprises. Some of them, it's not the type of money that you're looking for, but there are jobs out there. A lot of organizations now are moving back to on-premise and hybrid. Now, this in itself puts you as someone who is seeking to have a second job at risk, because companies are moving back based on the fact that they would have lost money or lost finances through, what do they call that? It's asset depreciation due to underutilization of assets. Is where the value in the asset has reduced because of the need for the asset. So a lot of organizations lost money through that. So it's the valuation of properties, right? Identifying the job that you want. So this ties back into point one, which I said to you. You have to look at self and identify who you are and what you want and where you're going, right? This also ties into what are the risks and how does that affect those around you? What is at risk? Who is at risk? I think this answers those two questions. So for me, my current job, I'm an auditor. What is my skill set? I'm an IT operations. I work with projects, networking, infrastructure, data privacy, governance, and cybersecurity. What I'm hoping to gain from having a side job, I'm hoping to keep up to date with technology. Now, for most of you, this might be different. You all might be looking to increase your financial gain. For me, working as an auditor, it takes me out of IT operations. Yes, having a side job does give me, I want to say, substantial gain financially, but it allows me to keep up to date with technology itself. Because technology changes, the same application that you might have used last year, this year has new modules attached to it. Therefore, if it is that I was to say go back into operations, have I not been doing architecting on the side, I would be oblivious to what is out there in the industry, and therefore I would basically be bogged down by being an IT auditor until I retire. So this is me keeping my options open. That is my main reason. Now, what impact does it have on me? I'm accustomed working with devices and I enjoy deploying security. So therefore, yes, I am an auditor by profession, but I'm also an IT operations person. And therefore, I enjoy coding in terms of I enjoy deploying switches and routers and firewalls, and I enjoy programming those things. I have a full-on network setup at home, right? Now, what is the impact on my family? Because of how I structure my consultancy, there's no impact to my family. And that in itself, which is work-life balance, is something that each one of you, in terms of taking on another project or another job, that is something that you have to take into account. I have 3 boys. I have a wife, she's doing her PhD. I have 3 boys who are very active. 2 of them do karate in terms of competitions. I'm constantly on the move. And then I have a 2-year-old who came to just keep me young, right? So this is something that each one of you, I think, would need to sit and draft in order to see where you want to go and determine if it is that a side job for you is the right thing. Now, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing, right? That's what Walt Disney said. So when I look at who you are, this is based on my own self. So I would be a security analyst, a security engineer, a security architect, and governance. Governance is auditing. Now, within the other 3 elements, which is an analyst, an engineer, and an architect, these here are the 3 elements that I would utilize in terms of having a second job. As an analyst, I could take a job that is after hours, that is outside of my normal working hours. I work on California time. Therefore, my start time for work is actually 11 a.m. So between the times of 4 a.m. to 11 a.m., I could literally work a second job. As an engineer, I could do the same based on where you're working, different time zones. Now, this is in itself is a catch, because you have to evaluate not only the time zone differences, but you also have to not compromise the job that you're going to. So what that means is that stop drinking while you're working from home, get enough sleep, eat properly, try and get some exercise, and sleep when you can. That gives you enough energy to work those 2 hours. Now, as an architect, that's a little different. An architect for me, in where I sit with security, I work my 2 jobs simultaneously at the same hours. What does that look like? What that looks like is that I schedule my meetings in my downtime when I am not actually involved on my actual work. Now, Jermaine could tell you that auditing in itself, there are days that you have, it's very intense. So I wouldn't schedule meetings with management at that point in time. Management keeps you on a payroll to make sure that they have the best person who, when there is need to talk to you, they're going to talk to you. And believe me, nothing is that important until it is important. What that means is that if management calls you, they're going to call you for something that is they can't deal with, or they need your advice on. What that normally looks like for me is calling me to ask me about a product and asking me to interview a vendor and ensure that when they spend $15 million on a new vendor, that $15 million is worth that investment. So that doesn't interfere with my actual everyday job. But if it is, I'll tell you how it can. One of the things that you have to look at is what they call conflict of interest. That could get you immediately terminated. So for me, working in the financial industry, there are certain things that I have to take into account. I cannot work for a competitor. I cannot work for a client of the bank that I'm working with. I cannot work with vendors who are associated with the bank that I'm working with in the capacity of making recommendations to vendors about my I guess it's making recommendations to my vendors based on my consultancy with an outside organization. Don't know if you all understand what that means. But what that means to me is I might use, let's say, swim lane at my outside organization. I cannot go to my everyday job and say, here's what, I use this company and I would like for them to be used at this organization. That in itself is a conflict of interest. That is you buying into a vendor, showing preference. So that is something that is very critical in how you look for a job. So I mainly look at small, or when I say small, I mean small to medium enterprises who are now developing their security, now developing into, I want to say they're trying to grow their organization, right? Any questions? Okay. Say a growth chart, right? So this is how when we spoke in the first chapter of who I am, this is how you're going to develop your skill set in terms of how you take on a job. So for every job that you would have learned, or every job that you've been in, you would have learned something. And at that job, at least before you left, you would have at least been able to, I want to say, grasp the full concept of what you would have learned. Whether that was reading Splunk in terms of being able to sort through Splunk, being able to utilize that information in terms of detecting malware, detecting incidents that are ongoing, so each job would teach you something that leads you into what is your current job. Now, based on your current job, you would also be learning something, but it does not mean to say that you will be doing what you were doing 2 years back or utilizing that skill. Now, a lot of us get complacent in terms of sitting in our job for 5 years. I always remember I went to school in England. My degrees are from England. There's a saying, if it is that you're in IT and you stay in a job in the same position for 5 years, you are no longer viable within the open market. What that means is that your skill set has become set and you're unable to learn new skills because you are comfortable. Any IT person that is uncomfortable in their position is someone who has growth in terms of they are looking to grow themselves more. And that person is the person that I'm telling anybody on here, even somebody who is now starting out, that is what makes you hungry enough that, you know what, you could work a side job and not compromise who you are because you understand what I am hoping to gain by having a side job. And I don't mean only wealth, as I explained, right? Things to consider in terms of having a side job. And that is there a conflict of interest? Can I do this job without affecting the performance of my present job, of my current job? Is the customer and employer getting my best? These are the 3 questions that you have to take into account when looking at a side job, when looking at any job, a matter of fact, but more so when it is that you have a stable job and you're looking to get into doing consultancy on the side. These are the 3 things that you need to take into account because these are the 3 things that could screw your career that you never work in IT. IT companies, IT personnel, they talk, and Jermaine is from a whole different group from where I am, but yet still we could have conversations. And I would have gone to to the same cybersecurity where I met Jermaine, and I met someone who knew someone from my previous job. So understand something, talk gets around. And these are the things that you need to maintain in terms of not creating a conflict between your present job and your side job. So cyber attacks, right? One of the things that I focus on within organizations, because of the fact that they are now starting off, a lot of them lack the information security and data privacy. I highlighted over 75% of targeted cyber attacks starts with an email. What that means is actually 75% of attacks come through users of systems. And why I point that out is because any organization that doesn't have a proper security policy and standard, their users are not going to be trained, their users are not going to be aware of security and how to capitalize on the security of the organization. I'll give a perfect real world example. So today I was called because there was an ongoing incident and no one was able to figure out what was going on, right? I got on the call and I asked one question. You all have an incident response team. This has been going on for the past 40 minutes. Have you all called the incident response team? What the incident response team looks like? It's every person from each, assigned persons from each information technology group that is able to come together, all the experts, and try and figure out what is wrong. When they actually call the incident response team, they were able to get it resolved in 15 minutes. Why this is important? This is because you as a consultant, you might help a company develop a security policy. You might even help them develop all the different security modules within that policy, which is change management, incident management, even things like how they monitor, response, even the teams. The reality is that if it is not the culture of the organization, they are always going to drop the ball. And this is where your role is kind of highlighted. You keep check and tabs on the organization, and that doesn't take anything from you. So for me, that didn't compromise my job today because that took me 20 minutes. I was in a big downtime today. I've been in a downtime for the entire day. So I don't make a sacrifice in terms of what my present employer is getting versus what my side job is getting. You don't ever compromise either. Because if you do, you're going to lose one of the two. Most times you lose the bigger picture, which is your regular job. And like I said, word gets around. It's going to get around to somebody from the organization that you have on the side, and it's going to be, okay, well, this person is not a good person in terms of they can't maintain their standing within the organization. They can't maintain their reliability, right? Key findings about small business cyber attacks. These are the statistics, and you can see right here, 70% of small businesses are unprepared to deal with a cyber attack. So this is all the stats in terms of why I target small and medium enterprises. It's because cyber crimes has increased, but due to COVID-19, it was the only time that small businesses were attacked, and it became very prevalent and very noticeable that these are the organizations that actually make up a bulk of the economy, and they were unprepared for cyber attacks, information security breaches, data privacy. A lot more states are adopting CCPA regulations, which is the California Privacy Act, as their privacy compliance. Virginia is one of them. Colorado is the other, and I think New York should be on board soon. So this is something to take into account when it is that you're looking for jobs. Don't look for another big bank or don't look for another competitor. Look for a small business. It might be something right in terms of the area that you live. You know, just a summary. 86% of organizations, at least one user will try to connect to a phishing site. 70% of organizations had users that were served with malicious browser ads. So if you look at this, most of this is from OWASP top 10 in terms of OWASP top 10 and Splunk in terms of how cybersecurity breaches and how cybersecurity in terms of information loss and data privacy breaches happen, right? And you'll see that these are the key sections that are focused on at present. And these things could be simple as company security policy for small and medium enterprises, better align security with company policy for the business units, adherence to more robust security frameworks, and develop a security baseline. The two organizations that I work with on the side, none of them have a baseline. One of the things with that is that you really have to try to get business units on board, because security is not the most loved in the industry. A lot of organizations see security as the ones that normally bog down systems. I would tell anybody on here, don't use McAfee. Sorry, but they tend to bog down systems and cause crashes. So let's discuss the very key topics. Who is at risk? Who is at risk is more you than the organization. Reason why you are replaceable. You are at risk of losing your income. What that looks like is you lose your income, you lose the ability to provide for self and family, if it is that it comes down to that. What is at risk? Your reputation. If it is that your reputation is hit, I'm telling you, within the industry, you are blacklisted. Some people say there is no such thing, but I can tell you I know at least a couple persons who have been blacklisted, and the banks normally blacklist you if you're working especially within the financial industry sector. You will get blacklisted. They all communicate. Why take the risk? And what does why take the risk mean is, why take the risk of sacrificing yourself and your career if it is that you don't do it right? And I would have pointed out what are the key elements that you look at. Conflict of interest is the biggest one in there. You cannot just look at running down the financial gain, because that in itself could put you in a bind. Is the risk worth it? In taking the risk, like I pointed out, you put not only yourself at risk, but you also put your family. For those of us who have families, you put your family at risk and you put your career at risk, and being somebody who deals with risk on a daily basis, the less risk that there is the better for you, it's better for the organizations that you hope to serve, it's better all around. So reduce the risk by reducing the threat that is out there. And what that threat is that is the compromise of compromising yourself for that money. And it brings us to the end. This is where you can find me. This is who you can call. You could call me. I have been asked, I mentor a couple professionals. I call them professionals. Some persons now starting out in their career. I don't charge. I don't believe in charging for helping someone to develop themselves. I'm not a guru. I am not an expert. I'm a professional. Anybody who calls themselves an expert at anything, I don't believe it's so because of the fact, and this is just my view, technology changes. I've seen people who call themselves expert in doing something. When a new release of an application or program comes out, they're lost because they have synced their minds to only focus on one way forward. Like I said, I'm a professional, and that is what I hope to maintain in who I am. I don't compromise myself for any amount of money. So, like I said, my family is my biggest driving force, and education is the key to anything that you hope to achieve. So now I will open the floor for questions.
Hey, Kurleigh, this is Jermaine. So Bianca posed a question in the chat. It says, I am just getting started. I did a 15-week program and obtained my CYSA Plus certification already. This is starting with no experience at all. I do know that I need more hands-on training. What should be my next step?
Right. So if it is that you're now starting out and you just did Security Plus, right? One of the things that you would want to do is get familiar with the different applications that are used. I'm guessing that you're an analyst, Bianca. Could they speak, Dana?
Yes, I can allow Bianca.
Yeah, it just makes it easier.
Okay, Bianca should be available to Bianca, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Bianca, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Yeah, so the program that I did, it was for people that were just beginning and switching careers. So I have no experience at all in tech. And it was just a 15-week program that kind of showed you this information, and you took notes and tests and quizzes, and then you had to test for your CYSA. But with that, being honest with myself, I noted that it wasn't in depth for what I would truly need. So I would say that, I mean, I know that I have the cert, but I just truly want to start over, honestly, and build from there, because I think that it was more so a program to get numbers of students and not truly a program that truly teaches you in depth for what you need starting off. So if that makes sense, but that's where I am. It's truly just starting from the beginning.
Okay, so let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that you did that program and you learned nothing?
Very little.
Okay.
Very
so
little.
Here's what. This is where self-reflection has to really take a toll, in terms of you have to recognize that you would have done a 15-week program and you would have written an exam, a certificate exam, that you would have passed. You would have passed that exam because you would have gained knowledge, right?
Right.
Now, coming out of that, what that tells me is that, okay, you're green to the market, but it doesn't mean to say that you don't know anything. You do know some things. And what that looks like is that what you need to do now is just find the correct role that would allow you to expand on the knowledge that you would have gained. What sometimes that might look like is you going to work with your notes that you would have made,
Mhm.
and reading back your notes and realizing, oh, I learned this. Okay, I know this. And being able to see what it is on paper, but know what it is to actually do that in the real life world.
Mhm.
Now, I would have, even when I first met Jermaine, I told him, I say, one of the things is that a lot of people come out of these programs with just a paper and they have no clue as to what to do. And that
Right.
is true, just as you said. But coming out of that, it's your responsibility to build on that. It's not about just, okay, I have the paper and I want a new job. Like, I'll tell you, I interviewed someone who did a Security Plus and CH, and when I started asking him critical questions
Mhm.
associated with industry, he was like, he can answer, but
Right.
you want an engineering job. And I'll tell you something, my advice to that young man was, here's what, take 6 months, go back as an analyst and learn everything that you could that you would have learned in that course. Learn it in terms of the real world experience,
Mhm.
and then come back to me. Whether or not you're interviewing for a job, whether or not you're looking for a new job, come back to me after 6 months and let's do over the same interview that I did with you. He came back, we did over the same interview. About 3 months after that, I told him, I said, here's what, apply for engineering position now. He applied and he got through.
Oh,
So
wow.
sometimes it's you taking the initiative in investing in you. And that was one of the things that I said early on by Mr. Hill. He pointed out that one of the wealth that we seek after, the greatest wealth that you could have, is education and knowledge. You understand?
Yeah.
So Bianca, go back, take 6 months. Are you in a security role right now?
No, that's what I was saying when I said what should be my next step, because after that,
Hey.
exactly what you're saying, like I went back on YouTube, I went back to do the because on YouTube they had us looking at performance-based questions and performance-based examples with the servers and everything. So I went back to those, and it kind of just seems like I'm going in a circle in a way. So that's where my question lies. Like, okay, what should I do
Okay.
next? Like, yeah.
So then let me shoot something your way.
Okay.
Go onto Udemy,
Okay.
and look for the same course that you would have done, right? Which is CYSA plus, right?
Correct.
Right. Go onto Udemy, find the same course, and go through the course that they have on Udemy.
Okay.
Udemy is normally more in-depth, and you will get a better representation rather than looking at YouTube.
Mhm.
That is one. The second thing that you need to do is start looking for analyst jobs, start looking for entry-level job, right? And take your time in terms of getting into it. The fact that you have the certification, someone is going to notice you.
Mhm.
Normally around summer to fall, the market is kind of like in a downturn.
Mhm.
The reason for that is because you have a lot of behind the scenes mergers and fluctuation of stocks and stuff like that going on. So the market in terms of jobs is normally kind of tough. But try and apply for some analyst roles, some entry-level roles, and you should get in there. And you could take you could hit me up on LinkedIn. Sometimes I do come across some of those roles. I could shoot it your way.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else?
We have another question from Justina. It says, I'm currently taking IT support training. My desire is to be in the cybersecurity field. is it advisable to do a safe study to get the Security Plus certification and then apply for a job?
I want to say yes. I see Security Plus as an entry-level certification. Why is that? Is because it teaches you the basics of security, and it allows you to have a better understanding of IT from a security perspective. So just like Bianca, doing that Security Plus would allow you to get into an analyst role. And I would tell you, you know, stay there 6 months to a year, figure out, you know, what are the security elements that you want to focus on, whether it's information security, access management, database security, cyber security, data privacy, or you could even specialize in Microsoft or cloud technology. So you have to actually be in industry or get into industry in order to specialize and see where you want. Because, okay, like for me, I like the idea of information security, data privacy, governance. But I don't like cloud. I don't like cloud because of the fact that I see a lot of issues in terms of the deployment of security within the cloud, things like shared keys and stuff like that. And in a situation like that, you put yourself at risk in terms of being a cloud security professional versus being someone who is able to protect the same information that is going into the cloud through infrastructure security. Because the cloud security has to interface with your on-premise equipment. So in terms of the cloud security, a lot of that is automated by the vendors themselves. So I see the benefit in doing infrastructure security versus cloud security, and that is just my personal view, you know. So I would say, you know, get into a role, take 6 months to a year, learn what it is that you really want to specialize in terms of cybersecurity. A lot of times people talk about cybersecurity as the internet, but let me just highlight something. Cybersecurity is really 5 elements. It's information security, infrastructure security, data privacy, governance, risk and compliance, and the last part is physical security. All these things together make up cybersecurity, right? And you have to figure out where in that realm you want to be. A lot of people don't go physical security because that in itself, most organizations, they have security, meaning physical security department. So then cyber is left up to just simply being everything that is on a computer, you know? So I would say go get into industry, take 6 months a year and figure out what you want to specialize in terms of cybersecurity. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see.
Curleigh, may I ask one more question? This is Bianca again.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I just had that one more question, but when you were talking about governance earlier and auditing, that's something that I came across a little while ago, and I didn't know if that's something that I can also get into when I'm first beginning, or does that take a little bit of time as well?
Your path to auditing, and I'm hoping Jermaine could help me on this, but your path to auditing could actually be shorter than someone who is coming through from being an analyst all the way up to an auditor, right? And why is that? Is because you have what you call auditing, like very specific auditing, I want to say courses. So courses that teach you how to audit, why you audit, what is auditing. And you have CPA CIA, and CISA. Those are the 3 recognized certifications for auditing.
Mhm.
A large portion of that has to do with you actually getting in to auditing. What that looks like is you having like a bachelor's degree in business administration or something like that, and getting
I have
in.
mass comm with a minor in business management.
Okay, so that might actually work.
Okay.
So it would entail you trying to get into the auditing department. What I will tell you is that in terms of IT, auditing is very different from financial auditing. Most times, in the organizations that I have worked with, IT auditors normally come from persons who would have been involved in IT at some point in time, and not just typical auditor. That is simply because you have to take into account the different systems and different limitations of those systems in performing an audit.
Okay. 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 I'll write that down. Thank you again.
So it's normally quicker, but it's difficult. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Donnell?
Sure. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. And, I know we're a little over, but one question that we do get quite often, we interact with any of our BIT members is, could you further elaborate on how do people actually break into tech? Because I know it is such a wide thing, technology, security, but like, what would you recommend everyone make their first step be when they say, hey, I want to pivot to anything? What would you recommend their first step be?
So I would tell anybody, if it is that you're trying to get into technology, you have to first understand what IT is. Information technology has evolved from when I started in telecommunications. And I remember when telecommunications went from being a circuit switch to a packet switch to IP switch. Right? A lot of persons get into IT and they try to get into security, but it's how the learning for cybersecurity has become. It's more capitalized as a market that is bent on, I want to say, getting money from the persons that are paying these institutions, right? I would tell anybody that once it is that you're trying to get into IT, learn what communication is. And when I say communication, I don't mean communicating with somebody. I mean, learn what IT communicating is. What that is packet IP switch networks. I would tell anybody, get into networking, get into computer science. Computer science is more bent on the backbone of IS, information systems, and that would be tied to things like programming, Python, C++, SQL, databasing, software development. So for me, there's 2 core parts to information technology. There's IT and IS. IS is information systems, which is mainly software, and IT is the hardware side of the house, which is communications. So you have to know your strengths. Like for me, my strength wasn't in sitting down and trying to figure out what Gibbridge looks like to build a software. It was just easier to put on hardware, understand how a switch talks to another switch, how it talks to a router, how it talks to a firewall, how firewalls rules are written, how data is transferred from point A to point B, and be able to set up a network. Versus somebody who is going to start at ground zero and build out an application that looks like syntax but by the time they're finished, it's a whole website with colors, pictures, moving parts. So you have to know what exactly you want to do. What I can tell you is that both IS and IT take you into security. It's still two different aspects of security. One will be SecOps, which is security operations, and the other one will take you into DevOps, which is development operations or development security operations. What that looks like in terms of development is software development, or what they call secure software development. The other side of that is secure communications, which is where information security, infrastructure security, data privacy lies. So it's all about the two realms of cybersecurity, but it's where you feel most comfortable. Like, there's one thing that I tell people, you look at my profile, you will not see anything dealing with any programming. And that is because in my 23 years, I've never had to use it. But for some god reason, every time I look at a job profile, it is asking for Python, Perl, Bash, something. And I always say, if I automate everything, when there's a breach, the automated program, how does the automated program decide if the breach is ongoing or not going on? If it's from something like a spoofed IP, it can't tell. And that is where human interaction comes into play. It's okay to use AI in terms of Splunk, CA Performance, Dynatrace, these applications in terms of investigating your network for breaches, investigating your network for performance issues. It's okay to use those things and have those things automated. But when it comes down to die-hard security, the human element has to be there. Some people argued me with that, but I know I have a couple of friends who they in IS and they always say, yeah, that is something that you can't automate. You could automate the response, but the response is not always at all times correct.
All right, and I know we're over on time, so again, I want to be respectful to everyone's time that has joined. Do we have any other questions before we wrap up? Does anyone have any questions for Kurleigh? And also, Kurleigh's contact information is on the screen for those that are looking to connect with Kurleigh. His email address, LinkedIn profile, as well as his phone number is on, as well as Jermaine also put his contact information, or you can reach us all on LinkedIn, the Blacks in Technology Charlotte chapter, and you can all contact us there with any questions. But making our final call for any questions for Kurleigh. All right, as they say at the auction, going once, going twice. So, again, thank you all for joining. Again, we had the pleasure of having Kurleigh Ryan talk to us all. So again, Kurleigh, thanks again for taking the time. Thank you all for joining, for participating, for asking questions. Justina, Bianca, for your questions, your participation, especially Jermaine, the president of our chapter, and Dennis, executive director of Blacks in Technology. So again, like to thank you all for joining in on our session with Kurleigh Ryan. I hope you all have a good night. Make sure you all stay hydrated with this heat wave. Please stay hydrated. Make sure your air condition is working, so you all don't suffer from dehydration or heat stroke.